What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to VJ Basketball Takes, and today's gonna be a long video because we're gonna be talking about the Kevin Durant and Brooklyn Nets situation. And I want to start from the time where Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving both signed with the Brooklyn Nets, because me personally, I want to give y'all a backstory on why the situation is what it is today. Now, before I start the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And to start the video, we all know what happened in the summer of 2019. Kyrie Irving signed with the Nets, and then also Kevin Durant will be involved in a sign and trade to the Nets for D'Angelo Russell, Javon Graham, and Shabazz Napier going to the Warriors. And I believe Kevin Durant and a 2020 first round pick that was protected will go to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, in the offseason, they also signed a player in DeAndre Jordan to a 4-year, $40 million deal, where I believe Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant had a big say in that signing, because it's been reports that DeAndre Jordan, not even reports, DeAndre Jordan from himself said that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving is his brothers. They have a very close bond. And it's also been reports that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving signed a certain type of deal so they can have more cap space to sign a player like DeAndre Jordan. Now, in retrospect, seeing DeAndre Jordan sign to a 4-year, $40 million deal was a terrible deal. But that's what Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving wanted. Those were their two superstars. So I know why the Brooklyn Nets did it. And then the next season, in the 2019 to 2020 season, as we know, as the pandemic season, the bubble season, whatever you want to say, Kevin Durant would not be able to play. As we all know, the season prior to that, he tore his Achilles and he could not play. And Kyrie Irving also was injury riddled in that season, so he only played 20 games and would not be able to play in the playoffs due to those injuries. Now, the summer of 2020, the Nets fired Kenny Atkinson, the coach who just was coaching D'Angelo Russell, who just had a great season with D'Angelo Russell, Jared Allen, and Karis LeVert. They fired Kenny Atkinson in favor of Steve Nash. Now, there's also been reports that Steve Nash and Kevin Durant is very close from the Golden State Warriors days, and the main part of the reason why the Nets hired Steve Nash was probably Kevin Durant to appease their superstars. Now, in the start of the regular season of 2020 to 2021 season, James Harden made it openly that he wanted a trade. He wanted a trade. He requested a trade, and his main team that he wanted to be traded to, or teams they wanted to be traded to, was the Sixers or the Nets. And as we all know, at the beginning of that season, the Brooklyn Nets traded for James Harden. Now, what the Nets gave up for James Harden was Jared Allen, Taurean Prince, a 57 overall pick in 2017, and Alexander, I can't even say his last name, Karis LeVert, Rodions Kurucs, 3 first-round picks, and another 4 first-round pick swaps. So that in total is 7 first-round picks, an all-star at Jared Allen, and a very good 2 role players in Taurean Prince and Karis LeVert. And what they received in that trade, as we all know, was James Harden and a 2nd-round pick from the Cavs in 2024. Now, as the season goes, this is a very fun season for the Nets, because they didn't need all three of their superstars to play and to win games. They finished out the season 48-34, and I believe in this season the Brooklyn Nets big three played I believe around 10 games, and they still went the 2nd seed in the East. And the first round, they beat the Boston Celtics pretty easily in the first round, beating them 4-1 in 5 games. And then when it came to the 2nd round, though, they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks in 7 games due to multiple injuries, basically due to Kyrie Irving being injured and also James Harden being injured, right? And James Harden also came back in Game 7 with a hamstring injury, but it wasn't enough because he was playing through injury. So they eventually lost to 7 games. And a lot of people didn't really care about them losing, or they didn't make a big fuss about it, even though there was a super team. a lot of people did make a big fuss about it because we all knew that if Brooklyn Nets was fully healthy, they would have won that series and they would have beat the eventual champions in the Milwaukee Bucks. So a lot of people didn't really even like speculate too much about it. They didn't really take it as serious because they was very injury riddled in that series. Now in the next season, the NBA would force this vaccine mandate, and Kyrie Irving couldn't play in a lot of those games. Now he could play in certain road games against teams like, let's say, the Minnesota Timberwolves, or let's say the Warriors, because they didn't have strict vaccine mandates. But a big city he couldn't play in was the state that he was playing for, and that's in New York. He couldn't play for the Brooklyn Nets because he couldn't play in their home games. And the Brooklyn Nets didn't want Kyrie Irving to be a part-time player and only play in road games, so they just sidelined him for all the games. So for a chunk of the season, the Nets did not play Kyrie because they didn't want him to be a part-time player. So James Harden and Kevin Durant were playing ridiculous minutes in regular season games after James Harden having a injury-riddled season. And this is the season after that KD just came back from a season where he just tore his Achilles. So asking those two injured players to play 35 minutes plus a game was ridiculous considering their injury history, right? So then eventually the Brooklyn Nets finally allowed Kyrie Irving to play road games. And now this means that Kyrie Irving is a part-time player. And after he played a couple games, Kevin Durant was sidelined with an MCL tear. Now this goes back to basically James Harden and another superstar playing, but now this superstar is only playing part-time. So when it came back to the home games, it will only be James Harden and a bunch of role players out there playing against top-seeded teams because Kyrie Irving refused to take the vaccine. Now whether or not I believe Kyrie Irving should have taken the vaccine, it's not my place to talk. I can't tell him to take the vaccine, and I can't just like go into his personal life and tell him to just take the vaccine and just shut up. You know what I'm saying? So James Harden was playing by himself, and by the trade deadline, James Harden reportedly quietly asked for a trade request. He didn't want to make it a public knowledge that he wanted a trade request, but he quietly asked for a trade request, and he also sidelined himself and rested some games before the trade deadline happened so he wouldn't suffer another significant injury, I'm assuming. And by the trade deadline, James Harden was traded alongside Paul Millsap for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 3 first-rounders. Now, even though, to me, I feel like the Brooklyn Nets won that trade in some way because they got some first-round picks back from the James Harden trade, and also got a young player in Ben Simmons, and also 2 additional great role players. Ben Simmons did not play this whole entire season. So Ben Simmons, even getting Ben Simmons back, even getting Ben Simmons in that trade didn't really matter because they didn't get to play him because he was sidelined with a back injury that they knew about, or that he made it public knowledge that he did have a back injury, but they still took a chance on him, and he didn't play for the rest of the season, including the postseason. Now, after this trade went down, around March 23rd, New York Mayor will finally allow Kyrie Irving to play full-time. So now he's a full-time player, and now, to me, it was already too late. You know, you lost a lot of chemistry. I feel like regular season games are very important because of the seeding. Now you're in the play-in, so whether or not you make it out the play or make the playoffs, you're playing against a top-seeded team in the East, where you're either playing, I believe you're either playing Miami or you're playing the Boston Celtics. And as we all know, they beat the Cavaliers to play the Boston Celtics in the first round. And in that first round, as we all know, KD and Kyrie would not play as best as they could, and they will get swept by the Boston Celtics in the first round in 4 games. Now, after the playoffs was done over with, the Warriors won the championship, this would be the conclusion of the 2021 to 2022 season, and the free agency starts. And when free agency starts, Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets were in talks for a contract extension, and they didn't come to terms on the contract extension because basically, to put it short, Brooklyn didn't want to sign Kyrie Irving for a full-time deal because they're scared of his health. They're scared of him taking another, sitting out. They don't know what's gonna come next. They don't know whether Kyrie Irving is gonna just sit out of nowhere because of something else, or even you can look into Kyrie Irving past. He has a lot of injury-riddled seasons where he couldn't play because of injuries. So they didn't want to sign him to a long-term deal, but that doesn't mean that they didn't want to sign him at all, because they still want the Kyrie Irving on their team, because as we all know, keeping Kyrie Irving is basically keeping KD. So they still want the Kyrie Irving on their team, so they offered another contract where it's a lot of incentives, like he had to play 60 games and he had to do this and this many games. He basically had to play a lot of games in the season so he can get his full contract. But he didn't want to sign that deal either, because that doesn't help him, which is understandable. A lot of people need to learn that him not wanting to sign a deal that's only benefiting the organization is really, really understandable, because it's not benefiting him. You got to think about what's about his insurance. He needs insurance that even if he gets an injury that he cannot control, he will still get paid at the end of the day. So Kyrie Irving, after talking, Kyrie Irving still opts in to his player option, and after that, they were still looking for trades to trade Kyrie Irving. And as we all know, it was reported that Kyrie Irving really wanted to go to the Lakers, so they was in trade talk with the Lakers about Westbrook and all of that. And after a couple of days of Kyrie Irving opting into his player option, Kevin Durant, as we all know, asked for a trade out of Brooklyn. Now, his first two teams that he wanted to get traded to were the Phoenix Suns or the Miami Heat. And my personal opinion, I don't think that Kevin Durant really has a say in where he goes to, just the fact because he is on a deal where he's locked in for another 4 years. When his deal ends will be 2026. He'll be like 38 years old by the time his deal ends. And of course, he will be an unrestricted free agent. But we don't even know if Kevin Durant is going to play until he's 38 years old. Or even if he plays until he's 38, we don't know if he will be injury riddled or not. Because I still think the way Kevin Durant's game is, he still can hoop. But we don't know how injury riddled he will become or not. So him requesting a trade with 4 years on his contract and trying to specifically designate where he wants to be traded to is kind of messed up, especially after the Miami Heat or the Phoenix Suns can't offer them anything. Now, after weeks and weeks, Kevin Durant a few days ago met up with the owner, Joe Tsai, who, like I just said, is the Brooklyn Nets owner. He met up with the owner, and basically, to conclude that conversation, he gave an ultimatum and reiterated his trade request. He gave an ultimatum and basically said, it's either me or the pairing of Sean Marks and Steve Nash, where I take that as you either get rid of both of them or you fire one of them. And as we all know, I think a day later, or that same day, Joe Tsai made a tweet about it and said he's gonna be behind his front office back. He's gonna keep Sean Marks, and he's gonna keep Steve Nash in the front office. Now, this whole situation is very confusing to me, because it was reports when Steve Nash was first hired. It was reported that Kevin Durant wanted Steve Nash. I thought Kevin Durant wanted Steve Nash. I thought he wanted him to be there, considering after the Warriors days, where it was being reported that Kevin Durant and Steve Nash had a very close relationship. So him wanting Steve Nash out of Brooklyn is very weird to me. And also, Sean Marks, I feel like, did a very good job of filling their needs. Kevin Durant was very close to DeAndre Jordan and James Harden. And we're not gonna talk about the trades they made to get James Harden, where they gave up 2 young players just to get James Harden. And then they also gave up 7 first-round picks to get James Harden. They gave us 7 first-rounders to get James Harden, just for James Harden to leave the season after that because your co-star wouldn't get the vaccine. You know, so for a brief moment, I'm gonna talk about Kevin Durant side and then Brooklyn Nets side. Kevin Durant side is that he doesn't like where the Brooklyn Nets is heading to. Let's keep it real. He does not like where the Brooklyn Nets is heading to, and he does not like Apparently, he does not like Steve Nash or Sean Marks in the front office. Apparently, so Kevin Durant went out. Now, it's also been reports that said Kevin Durant doesn't want to play with Ben Simmons either, which is completely understandable. You get a guy for a player like James Harden, and you want a guy like Ben Simmons to play on your team because Ben Simmons, as we all know, is the all-star, a top 5 defender in the NBA, a great playmaker. He's great at everything except for shooting the jump shot or probably scoring the ball, right? You want to play like that on your team, but him not playing any seasons, and we just traded basically a superstar for that player, you're gonna want out. You're gonna be like, what is going on with this franchise, right? And then, considering the fact that Kyrie Irving is the reason you joined Brooklyn, and then them not offering Kyrie Irving that extension and putting all those incentives on Kyrie Irving's contract, basically pushing Kyrie Irving away, Kevin Durant is gonna be like, yeah, I want out of here. The coach that I came here with is possibly not gonna be a Brooklyn the next season. Yeah, I want out. But from the Brooklyn side of it, they've been basically filling Kyrie and Kevin Durant needs. They gave him DeAndre Jordan that they wanted. They gave him James Harden. That let's all be real. Do you think that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving was advocating for Jared Allen and Karis LeVert to stay on the team? No, they wanted James Harden too. Once they heard that the Brooklyn Nets might get James Harden, they probably pushed for the trade even more to get James Harden. So let's be real. They wanted James Harden. They got everything that they wanted. They locked up Kevin Durant for another 4 or 5 years. And then what they got from that was a second-round exit. A first-round exit as well after making that James Harden trade. They got 2 playoff disappointments. The first one you can't control because of injuries. But the second one, let's be real. From the Brooklyn Nets standpoint, they could have just they could have wanted Kyrie Irving to play. Like they wanted Kyrie Irving to prioritize his. They wanted Kyrie Irving to prioritize his. They wanted Kyrie to prioritize basketball over his personal beliefs. And Kyrie Irving's personal beliefs was like, why? And just something in my body that I don't know anything about. And I completely understand that. But you can't expect the Brooklyn Nets to understand it where they're running a organization, and the thing that gets them money is basketball, and you're not playing basketball. So it's completely in their right to be mad and only want to sign you to a very restricted deal because you're not playing for them and you're not giving them what they need. Now, what will happen with this Kevin Durant thing? I don't know. A month ago, I was saying that Kevin Durant is going to completely stay with the Brooklyn Nets, but now I don't know because they gave him an ultimatum, and I know what Kevin Durant doing. I know what he's doing. He made it publicly known that he doesn't like his executive and he doesn't like his head coach. So we all know what Kevin Durant is doing. He wants to be traded. So now they have to trade Kevin Durant, because how would it look for the Brooklyn Nets to keep Kevin Durant around Steve Nash, after him making it publicly known that he doesn't even want to be a part of that roster. Now, if I were Joe Tsai, I would want to try to make a trade for either with the Pelicans or the Boston Celtics. Boston because of Jaylen Brown, and I think they can get Jaylen Brown with another great role player and some picks. Or the Pelicans, they can get Brandon Ingram, who's basically like Kevin Durant, who just had a stellar postseason, and they can probably get another role player with some more picks. So that's how I feel about it if I were Joe Tsai. Me personally, I don't know where this situation is going to go in the next couple of days. We don't know where he's going to go. We don't know if he's going to be ending up in Brooklyn. We don't know if he's going to end up in Phoenix. We don't know where he's going to end up at. And I just feel like that everything that happened to Brooklyn is a combination of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving's fault and the Brooklyn Nets fault for allowing them to keep enabling this behavior. But this will be the end of the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I want to briefly talk about my last video hitting over 500 views. That was my most successful video, and I want to thank y'all for that. And by the way, if you have a video idea, please comment it below. Please comment it. And I want to give a huge shout out to Bulls Kicking Ass on Twitter for doing a lot. That account was a main reason why I got a lot of views. So I want to give a huge shout out to Bulls Kicking Ass on Twitter. Please check the description below for their Twitter. And yes, have a great day.